Welcome to You've Got This with Sarah Hamaker, a podcast to encourage and equip moms along their parenting journey. Join Sarah each week as she interviews dads and moms like you and discusses the joys, challenges, and rewards of raising kids.
Hi, I'm Sarah Hamaker, and thank you for joining me on You've Got This. Today I'm talking with David Martin. He is a dad of two older boys, and he's also a retired high school counselor and a parent coach. So welcome, and thank you for joining me today, David.
Happy to be here. Thank you, Sarah.
And today we're going to talk about teens and driving. This is something that is been on my mind lately because I have a 16-year-old who is studying to get her learner's permit, and I'm not sure I want her to have it. I'm a very kind of free-range parent. I love that she wants it, but I'm a little nervous. So, David, do you have any advice for me? I don't want to be nervous, but I'm not really nervous about the other drivers. I'm literally nervous about the damage to our cars. I'll just be honest here. So, hell, what can you talk me off the ledge? Because I'm kind of a little bit anxious about this.
Yeah, and like you said earlier, I have two adult boys, and they're both married and have children, small grandchildren. But I know I was especially concerned when they were, their late, mid-teen years, when I knew it was coming close, and I knew they both wanted to drive, and they were going to want to drive as soon as they turned 16. So especially the older boy, because he was a wrestler, and he was much more reckless by nature and just like a risk taker. But the one thing that we did was we made it real clear to him that he was not going to be in the car with anyone, any of his friends or peers until he has his own license. And one of the things we did prior to that was we just sort of had just sit down with him and his younger brother too, just to go over, this is, your whole world is going to expand greatly in a short amount of time once you have your license. And with that freedom comes added responsibility.
Right.
So, we sat and we coached them over this, and we went through all the different scenarios. But the hardest thing is when you actually give them keys for the first time and they pull out.
Right. That's my fear, David.
That's where I think, you turn them over to God, you pray, you just say, you know what, I've prepared them well. And to that point, I felt really good about both of them because they were good with responsibilities around the house, chores. It was never a big issue. They were pretty compliant kids. They had their moments, but so I felt like they were, how could I deny them this opportunity? Now, once they were given that opportunity, then, there's certain guidelines we put into place, and we made real clear that those privileges will be taken in a heartbeat if you break any of these guidelines.
So what kind of guidelines? Did you have kind of like a driving contract with your kids? I know that.
Exactly. And I think, if I could look back on it, I think if it was possible, and I think it was possible at that time, we could have actually, bought a good used car for the older boy because they were like 5 years apart, so we would have had. We could have bought a good used car for him and, even put the title in his name. And with that comes, you pay insurance.
Right.
You have to pay any car repairs. You have to pay, for gasoline. Those are all going to be your responsibilities, and this car is going to be in your name. But we didn't do that because, we just thought, okay, you can use ours. And we found out that became a major headache.
Oh.
Because, I'm getting in the car, and I'm getting in my truck, and it's, it's always on empty. And, it's just always having to fix the mirrors and, it's just the radio's all as soon as I turn it on, it's, but so there was just some inconveniences on our part. And also because he was working part-time because in order, to maintain the car, he had a monthly allowance, but it was like that was not going to cover the cost. So, and we made it clear, if you break any of these guidelines or not able to do it, then, we're going to take the car back over and we're going to sell it. I mean, that's just what's going to happen if you're not able to.
So what kind of things were in your contract?
Well, specifically it was you have to pay your insurance, and we covered that initially for a couple months because this was sort of all thrown on him, and he was working part time. He was a wrestler, so he had some. He was just working maybe 2 days a week on the weekends. So we basically I told him that, you're responsible for car insurance, the gas, and any kind of repairs that are going to be necessary. And also, because it's an issue. We're not going to deny it. Drinking and driving and drugs and we made it real clear to him at any point that if anyone got into his car, even if he was not drinking and they were drinking, his car was going to be taken from him permanently. Mm-hmm. And if he ever got into a car, even if it was someone else's car who was not drinking and he was drinking, then his driving privileges were going to be terminated. And as far as just being able to take care of, the financial responsibilities of having a car, we told him that because you're going to work part-time and you're wrestling, if your grades drop below what we know, and for him, he was a solid A-B student, if they drop below what the expectation is and we know you're capable of, then your car is going to be removed from you. You're not going to have driving privileges for a grading period till you bring your grades up. And if they're still not up, then we told them, your job would go, and then, you wouldn't be able to work anymore because grades are no more priority, and you would, ultimately have to sell the car. So I always saw it as a great opportunity. It's one of these things is, I want to prepare them to leave,
Right, yeah.
Get out of my
exactly.
life. As John would say, get out of my life and then successful lives of their own. But so that was sort of my ulterior motive, and I always saw that as like a goal. So I said, this is just the next step. And, we have to be willing to let him, deal with it. And hopefully, and they both, for the most part, there was very few incidents. There was a couple, but for the most part, it went pretty smoothly, better than I thought.
That's good. I feel better about that then. But it's interesting because there seems to be, I read more and more about teens who just aren't interested in driving. Now my oldest she wants to drive. She's not like, when she turns 16, she wants to finish driver's ed at school first. But she's anxious. She's interested. She can't wait in some respects to get it. And some of her friends are like that, but then some of them are like, no, I don't really want to drive. And there was an interesting article last year from the PBS NewsHour from 2017 that showed that the share of high school seniors across the country who have a driver's license dropped from 85% in 1997 to 71% in 2015. That's a huge drop in kids who don't want to drive. So why do you think so many teens are not interested in driving? Is it because mom and dad take them everywhere?
And I think it's part of it too. I think it's also because they haven't been prepared, because they probably, I don't want to generalize, but I think a lot of times kids, we talk about parents, that micromanage their kids' lives and every aspect of it. And kids, that creates more, maybe the parents become more secure because they're sort of dictating everything that goes on in their life, but the kids become more insecure. And I think part of that is that, because mom and dad have always done everything for me, I'm afraid to step out. And that's why, I think this is a gradual process, and it starts earlier where, it's whether riding your bike, now you can go 2 blocks away, or now you can go 3 blocks away, and then you have to be home at a certain time. So it's some parents, and I understand, there's, the nature of the world and, people, there's evil in this world and so forth, and they tend to not prepare their kids. And I think it creates a lot of anxiety on kids' part when it does get to this point where it's like, oh my gosh, I can actually drive this thing? And it's scary because they really, aren't equipped or haven't been prepared.
Yeah, and that's a great point, David. I remember when my oldest, when she was in 5th grade, she loved to ride her bike, and she knew where she was supposed to go. We're right behind a university. Not exactly right behind, but close enough. So we said, don't go on campus because there are a lot of kids there who don't know where they're going and they're driving. Right, exactly. But drive around. Well, one day she didn't come home. And we're like, what? And this was unusual. So I went out looking for her. Maybe she got a flat tire, walking her bike home or something. Couldn't find her. I walk in the door. My husband's on the phone with another mom who had seen her waiting on a corner. She got lost. She was like a 10-minute drive from home. She went, to this day, nobody knows how she got there. Because she said, I just went on these back roads. I wasn't on a major road or anything.
Right.
So I go pick her up, and we come back, and she was a little teary, but she was okay because we had, we prepared her. We said, okay, what happens when you get lost? Go to a cross street and wait. We'll find you. She knew our phone number, didn't have a cell phone, so her solution was, of course, a cell phone. And I'm like, no, not in 5th grade. We gave her a map instead, a map of the neighborhood.
Well, you know what?
And
so
showed her,
amen to that.
Yeah, and showed her where to go. And I tell you what, the first time she came back, and she's like, I got lost, but I looked at the map, went to the cross street, and looked at the map and figured out and came home. You should have seen the smile on her face. And I think that's what you're talking about, to get our teens. And we can't start when they hit 16. We have to start when they're 7, and you let them walk to the bus stop by themselves, because elementary school bus stops are like within, they're really close
20 feet of their house. Yeah. Yeah, they do bus stops at every house on the way,
Exactly. So we start doing that, and then that just gives them I guess I've always wanted my kids to want to be an adult. And I think that driving is such an adult thing. In some respects, I am not too surprised that so many teens don't want to, because they don't see any benefits to being an adult.
Yeah, and you think about the next transition after that. Because I still picture my 17-year-old son went to the University of Vermont. We live in Pittsburgh, and I still picture him walking away for the last time, to his dorm after we took him up there his freshman year. And he was 17. He didn't turn 18 until partway into September. But anyway, so watching him walk away with his backpack and thinking, oh my gosh, he's out in the world now. I mean, even though you're a college campus and there's campus, security and so forth, but it's just the idea of so it's sort of like, this is a great way to transition into that ultimately for, many kids at 18, they're going off to college. And they're basically on their own as far as no one's getting them up in the morning, making them eat at a certain time, making them eat. So it's sort of, it's one of these things where it's, do we want to prepare kids or do we want to repair? It's like,
I like
it's
that.
easier to prepare than repair, but I think often we get into the, I'm going to protect them as long as I can, and then throw them out there and then expect them to swim, and they're just not ready. They're just not, and I think that's more and more the case.
And I think that when we make being adult seem something that is attainable and is something that they should want, and that starts with encouraging them to do things on their own, like driving, making it so that they can drive, but also I think it encompasses making sure that you have a life outside of your kids, and this is especially for moms. Dads don't have this much of a problem, and I'm just the first to admit. I mean, they don't.
It's true.
But I find that when I talk to moms in groups and do speaking and stuff, I'm always like, you have to be a woman of mystery. I have to, I would have my own hobbies and stuff, and I would leave when the kids were little. I'm like, where are you going? I have to go to my meeting. And it was just like, wow, what is mom doing, kind of a thing. It's like that change. Right. I'm not their mom, and I think that when you make adulthood seem something interesting and wonderful, and we're always telling our kids when they get upset that we won't buy them something or do something. So, well, you can do that when you're an adult. You can choose to have ice cream for supper as an adult, but
and I mean, it's for your child's benefit that they see you more than just a mom. If you're an interesting person with specific, activities and friends and relationships apart from them, and this is the whole, parent-centered versus child-centered family. Even for single parents, and I would tell single parent moms that. I was just talking to one the other day, and I said, your daughter has to see that you're more than just there for her.
Yes,
that
exactly.
Because you're sort of, this is how she can look and want to emulate you one day and want to follow your lead and see, hey, this is an interesting person that is more than just a mom,
Yes.
It's for their benefit, I agree, and your benefit. I mean, for your mental health too, gosh.
It is, and just circling back to our main topic today is the teens and driving, and I think that's a large part of it, is helping them to have that independence from you, so that I don't have to drive you everywhere you want to go.
Exactly.
You can ask me for the keys, and go ahead.
Yeah. No, I'm saying it's also just trusting them that I believe in you. That and I would tell parents this a lot, especially with teenagers. You don't always have to believe your child, but you got to make them believe that you believe in them. You don't always have to trust them, because the nature of the beast, and I know teenagers, especially when you get in groups, I've coached for a long time, I've worked in high school for over 20 years, is that, I don't always have to believe you, but I believe in you, and that's important. And that's important to give them that sense.
And giving them keys and teaching them how to drive is, I think, a huge way of saying, you know what, we think that you're capable, we think that you will do your best, and we're willing to put a lot on the line, our car, our insurance,
exactly.
to let you drive, because we think this is important, and it's just I think it is one of those milestones in your teen's life.
I couldn't agree with you more.
I'm just sad that sometimes, either kids don't want it, they're too afraid, or their parents are too afraid to let them have it.
Right. Because I have a cousin right now that she's like 62. She's a few years older than me. But anyway, she didn't start driving until she was about 45.
Oh, my goodness,
And, she got married young and had kids and so forth, and she never wanted to. And her mother never learned to drive. Her mother is 92 years old, never learned to drive.
Oh.
And it was just sort of like, because they had someone else always take them around and take care of them. But their world has been so much smaller and so much more confined, and it was just because, for whatever reason, and I agree with you, I think it's a great opportunity to show you, I believe in you, and I trust in you, and I know you can do this, and it's like, because that's a major, you really have to have a lot of faith to say, you know what, and also, we just, my faith tells me, man, I turn my kids over to God. I mean, I pray for them, and I turn them over to Him, and I know that they're ultimately in His hands. So, and the other thing too, Sarah, that I think about is that, and I would say this a lot with parents, and they sort of like they'd squirm and their eyes would twist a little bit when I'd say this. I said, you have to be thankful sometimes when your kids screw up. And they'd be like, what? I said, because these are teachable moments. I'm not saying something that's life-threatening. I'm just saying when they do some stupid things, don't study for a test and fail it, or they miss a curfew, whatever. These are great opportunities to teach them. You have certain responsibilities, and these are priorities in your life right now. And if you don't take care of them, your freedom is going to be restricted. It's pretty simple. That's how it works. There's a connection.
Right, and having those connections and making sure that, that we pay attention to those moments. Not that every moment has to be a teaching moment. I know that's not what you were saying, but to use the moments that we're given with our teens. Well, I think that this has been, I feel better about letting my teenager drive. So thank you, David. With me today is David Martin, a parent coach with John Roseman's group. And I'm Sarah Hammaker, and this was You've Got This. Join us next week. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to this week's podcast of You've Got This with Sarah Hammaker. Sign up to receive notification of new podcasts and listen to previous editions at sarahhammaker.com. Until next time, remember, parenting might be hard sometimes, but don't worry, you've got this.